Feel the moon.
Okay.
Dick, are you speaking?
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes. All right.
Okay. Okay, good. It must have been muted by accident. So anyway, sorry, I'm talking to you from a pizza place, not my own home. So I feel kind of odd. But I had another meeting I had to be at. Anyway, I was invited to talk about my book, Lotus in a Sea of Flames, which was written for the 35th anniversary of the San Jose Temple. Have any of you gotten a copy of it or read it at all? No?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, what? Who have? Oh, you. Oh, okay. I see up there. So you're John. You're only on by phone, right? Is that okay?
Sorry, I didn't realize that you.
What's that?
I didn't realize that you had a book. I'm sorry. Could you tell me the title again?
Yeah. So here I have a copy of it for.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Lotus in a Sea of Flames. So it's a biography of Nichiren's life. I wrote it as a kind of fictionalized account where the dialogue is all based, there we go. The dialogue is all based on the English translations of his letters in the Writings of Nichiren Shonen series that the Nichiren Order Propagation and Promotion Association has put out. They're up to volume 7 now, though I'm not sure if they made volume 7 available through Amazon yet. Hopefully that will happen soon. And anyway, so my hope was to present Nichiren's life in the context of his times in his own words as much as I possibly could. Even the things many of his opponents say in the book come from what Nichiren reported people said to him, both his opponents and his disciples.
Whoever's reading, could you mute yourself? I'm sorry to interrupt, but whoever's reading, there's a phone or whatever, could you silence it, or unless that's you, Ryuei, because I am recording this. So,
so there's people who are part of this who are here only by phone, is that correct? Okay, gotcha. So I was thinking that maybe I'll just read a couple passages and then I could just open this up for questions and comments. I guess I should also say that if you want a copy of the book, please send a letter to the San Jose Nichiren Buddhist Temple with a check for $31, and they'll be happy to send you a copy. If you go to my blog on fraughtwithperil.com, I also have a link there to the temple's address and how much the book will be. But again, it's $25 for the book itself and then $6 for shipping and handling. So it's $31 altogether. And yeah, please get a copy of the book. The more there appears to be a demand for the book, the more incentive I have to make the book available online through Amazon and maybe in an ebook format. So let me select a couple passages here. Let's see. I think I would like to. Oh, what happened to the screen there? Okay. Can you still hear me?
Radio trains, I'm recording I'm actually trying to record the video.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Just the screen kind of went funny there for a second. All right. Excuse me a moment while I find the page that I want here. I think I would like to read the part where Nichiren is ambushed at Hamatsubara because I think that's one of the more exciting parts of the book. So I will flip over to that. Let's see. Here it goes. Okay. On the evening of the 11th day of the 11th month of that year, Nichiren was invited to the home of Kudo Yoshitaka, a longtime supporter and the steward of the Amatsu district in Awa. It was dusk when he set out from Dengeji on that frosty winter night, accompanied by 10 people, mostly monks who were disciples of his, but also a couple of messengers sent by Lord Yoshitaka. He remembered seeing his breath turn to vapor as they hiked along the road to Lord Yoshitaka's manor, little more than a mile away. As they passed beneath the pines of Komatsubara, they heard the snapping of bows, and then arrows began to fall upon them like rain. The monk Kyoninbo threw himself in front of Nichiren and fell with an arrow in his chest. Nichiren and the other members of his entourage ran for the cover of the pines. But Lord Kagenobu's men were there waiting for them, their swords flashing like lightning. There seemed to be hundreds of them, some on horseback, chasing them beneath the pines. In the confusion, at least, the arrows had ceased to fall. Of Nichiren's companions, only 3 or 4 were strong enough to fight back, but they did so with a will. With sword and staff, they fended off Lord Kagenobu's retainers, allowing Nichiren and the other monks to slip past. Horses could be heard coming down the road at speed from the direction of Amatsu. Now there was hope. No doubt this was the sound of Lord Yoshitaka and his retainers. He must have been warned that Lord Kagenobu had set up an ambush. In the lead, Lord Yoshitaka led his men in a battle cry as they approached. Eeo! Eeo! Lord Kagenobu's men looked to the road, and those who were mounted rode out to meet the newcomers. There was no time to call out personal challenges as the bands of mounted samurai charged towards one another, spitting arrows. Just as it seemed they were about to collide, they wheeled their horses off the road into the trees. Then the battle became very confused. They drew their tachi, long, gently curving cavalry swords, each side stalking the other through the darkening forest. None of the warriors on either side were armored, as Lord Kagenobu and his men had not expected an actual fight. They had probably imagined they could inflict mortal wounds on Nichiren and many of his companions with their first volley of arrows. They had not counted on a general melee, nor that Nichiren would survive long enough for help to arrive. As for Lord Yoshitaka and his retainers, they had received word about suspicious activity near the border of their estate, and had rushed out as quickly as they could, pausing only long enough to string their bows and strap on their swords, while servants hurried to saddle their horses and bring them from the stables. Consequently, with both sides unarmored, all the warriors realized that any blow that landed or arrow that struck could easily be fatal. Lord Kagenobu's retainers began to reconsider their leader's vendetta. They had come to kill the evil monk who had thwarted their lord and slandered the Pure Land teachings, but they were not so eager to go to the Pure Land that evening. It was also getting too dark to tell friend from foe. They began to hang back. Lord Kagenobu, however, was not about to withdraw. His skills honed by years of hunting in that same forest, he kept his eyes fastened on the fleeing monks and guided his horse expertly through the gaps between the trees. Keeping his distance from any would-be attackers, he scanned the area for his real target, the reason he had come here. He waited for just the right moment and angle that would assure an easy kill. Nietzsche then turned to see Lord Kagenobu bearing down on him, tachi raised to strike. There was no time to jump for cover. Nietzsche then called upon the power of the protective deities and spirits of the Lotus Sutra. With his left hand, he raised his juzu up as the blade came down. He heard the horse scream, felt the searing pain as the hilt of the sword struck his left wrist, and the blade slashed his forehead. Something struck a nearby rock with a sickening thud. By the way, my friend Ria did illustrations for the book, so there's one of them. Doesn't quite match the description of events, but close enough. Nietzsche then lowered his hand. His wrist felt broken, and he had to catch his juzu with his right hand before it slipped to the ground. Sweat clouded his vision as he wiped it away. No, it was not sweat. It was blood. The horse was galloping away without a rider. Tojo Kagenobu lay nearby. He had fallen from his horse. It was his head that had struck the rock. He stirred and groaned. So Kagenobu was alive, if only barely. Nietzsche then fell to his knees. He felt sick. Strong arms lifted him up. Lord Yoshitaka's men had found him at last. So I'll end that passage. Were you all able to hear me okay?
Yes.
I was.
Okay.
I was going to interrupt here and with a question, if I may, or would you rather the question later? I'm gonna.
Sure. No. Ask a question now. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, I wrote it down so I can, I've got pen and paper.
Okay.
One of my curiosities when I first heard about when first announced the completion of this project that you've been working on for a long time, was what kind of book was it? And you've kind of identified that this is a recreation, if you will, of conversations and activities in Nichiren's life. So it's somewhat fictional, but in helping understand here, make sure, I would like for everybody else to understand that it may be fictional, however, it is based on research from specifically, if not exclusively, Nichiren's own writings that have been authenticated as being at least first generation genuine.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, not exclusively, because I also use a lot of sources that give details about the period. I also found myself relying upon the Heike Monogatari, which was the long epic tale about the defeat of the Heike clan, which allowed for the rise of the Kamakura shogunate. But yes, especially for the dialogue and the events, I relied upon these writings of Nichiren Shonin, which are supposed to be just the authenticated letters of Nichiren. However, there are a few disputed writings in those writings of Nichiren Shonin as well.
We'll take them all as primary sources. In doing historical research and any scholarly research, you try to want to use primary sources. And I'm just, for anybody who may listen to the recording or watch it. So then it might be, I'm not the official classifier, but then it might be considered to be able to be considered historical fiction, if you will.
Yes, it's historical fiction, exactly.
Okay.
Also, I'll say two more things about that. One is there's an extensive endnotes as an appendix at the end of the book, and I tell the reader what the sources were for each chapter, like which gosho I used in which chapter to come up with the dialogue and events. I have to admit there's a few of the endnotes where things are not in quite the right place because I redid all the chapters. But for the most part, you'll be able to figure out which gosho I used. And I referenced the writings of Nichiren Shonin series. The second thing I want to say about this is that Dr. Jackie Stone at Princeton was gracious enough to fact check the entire book for me, so that if there was anything there questionable, based on, Ivy League level scholarship, she pointed it out. And there were a couple areas where I did change things. It has been vetted, so to speak.
Yeah, and for anybody who may not know, some of the history in Nichiren Buddhism in America, Jacqueline Stone is a well-respected, maybe not universally, but among most people who take scholarship seriously, Jacqueline Stone is highly regarded, very well educated, and has done extensive research and writing about Nichiren Buddhism. And I think objectively so, pointing out weak points and pointing out the strong points. Okay, back to you, Ryuei, or anybody else.
Any other questions about the last passage? Okay. I'm going to read one more passage and then open it up to discussion. So this is from the Minobu period, and it's a description of Mount Minobu and the early hermitage. Let's see. Okay. After arriving at Mount Minobu, Nichiren wrote a letter to Toki Jonin saying, "I have not yet decided whether or not to live in Minobu, but the atmosphere of the mountain is on the whole comforting to me, so I intend to stay here for a while. However, I am the one who in the end will be alone and wander around Japan. If I should settle somewhere, I would like to see you again." By the following month, the small band had left the village of Haki to follow a thickly overgrown trail, little more than a deer track, northwest into the deep boulder-strewn western valley of Minobu, where Lord Haki had donated the land to them, where they could build a hermitage. From there, they could see the snow-capped Mount Shichimen rising to the west. In the east, one could watch the rising sun as it came slowly up behind the peak of Mount Tenchi. Mount Minobu towered over them to the north, and to the travelers' southward side, Mount Takatori soared. Surrounded by the four mountains, they felt as if they were standing at the bottom of a giant basket made of rock and earth and snow, its walls so high that they wondered how birds could even fly over them. To the east of Mount Minobu, the river Fuji raced, and at times raged along its southerly course. Over the course of time, countless vessels that had attempted to cross it had been reduced to ruins, broken on the rocks that closeted the rapids like folding screens. Though remote, it was not a quiet place. The howling of the wolves echoed through the mountains, and the cries of monkeys reverberated in the valley. They often heard the dolorous mating calls of stags, and the constant shrill of the cicadas soon grew irritating. By the 17th of the 6th month, the makeshift hermitage, 6 yards square, had been constructed in an open space at the base of Mount Minobu. It consisted merely of 12 pillars, a thatched roof, mud walls, and the tree bark for a carpet. The end result seemed as shabby as tree leaves spread at the base of a tree. Still, once it was built, Nichiren found that he had no inclination to leave. "So you do like it here?" Lord Sanyaga asked Nichiren several weeks after the work on the hermitage was completed. Nichiren nodded. "I do. Here I can devote my life to the practice of the Lotus Sutra. In my eyes, this place looks like Eagle Peak in India or Mount Tiantai in China. Though I am neither Shakyamuni Buddha nor Great Master Tiantai, I respectfully recite the Lotus Sutra here day and night and expound the great calming and contemplation, morning and evening. So Minobu looks to me exactly like the Pure Land of Eagle Peak and differs little from Mount Tiantai." Though he had not intended to at first, Nichiren stayed at Mount Minobu for 8 years. It was a difficult life. Winters were long and the snowfall was very heavy, making it very difficult to receive visitors or get supplies. Even in the summer, it was difficult to get into the valley because of the thick grasses and weeds. But visitors did come from as far as Kamakura, Shimosa Province, and Sado Island. His supporters also sent many offerings, such as rice, wheat, salt, miso, potatoes, rice cakes, sake, straw mats, robes, and strings of coins, and also reference books for Nichiren's continued studies, lectures, and writings. Nichiren had found himself writing hundreds of thank you letters for these offerings, without which he and the scores of disciples and lay followers who came to live with him at Mount Minobu could not have survived. At times during this period, he became unbearably homesick for Kominato. There was a time when he received an offering of sea laver from the nun proprietress, who had once more become his benefactor, now that it seemed safe, and her now widowed daughter-in-law, who had also become a nun. In response, he wrote to the two widows, "Climbing up to the peak, I looked around at what appeared to be seaweed, but were all new shoots of fern. Going down into the valley, I thought I saw seaweed, but on closer inspection, I realized my mistake. It was actually thick-growing parsley. Living in the mountain, where things of the ocean are rare, I no longer thought about my hometown. But when I saw this laver you sent, memories filled my heart, making me feel sad. This is a laver I used to see in bygone days at the beach of the Katsu Ichikawa Kominato area. The color, shape, as well as taste are the same. Why is it that only my parents have disappeared, never to return? I cannot hold back the tears, it's still in remorse." Despite hardships and homesickness, in his 7th year at Minobu, Nichiren had written, "Residing here at Mount Minobu is truly like living in the everlasting land of the gods, where blessings come down from heaven. Even uncultured men and women would be attracted to this place. In the forlorn autumn twilight, the dew is deep around my grass hut, and in the eaves it is strung like pearls on spider webs. The leaves deepen into scarlet and are reflected in the water that intermittently flows through the bamboo plumes. And seeing them, one would not doubt that it is like the view on the upper Tatsukawa River. Also, behind my home, the rugged mountains rise up out of the depths, and the treetops ripen with the fruits of the one vehicle. Below the branches, the cicadas sing raucously. In front of my hut, the rushing waters flow by. The moon of suchness that is the true aspect of all things floats overhead in a sky clear to the darkness of deep ignorance, because there are no clouds in the sky of Dharma nature. In this tranquil setting inside my hut, we spend all day discussing the Dharma of the wonderful sutra, the one vehicle, and all through the night there is the sound of our recitation of the essential passages. It is as though Eagle Peak, where we have heard that the world-honored one Shakyamuni had lived, moved to this very place in our country. In the rising fog and severe storms, I go deep into the mountains to cut firewood. Through the dewy grass, I go down into deep valleys to collect water parsley. In the rapids of the swift mountain streams, I rinse vegetables. And as I impatiently wait for my dampened sleeves to dry, I think of the old poet Hitomato, who recited, "At Waka no Ora, the fishermen think of the passing of their lives as they wait for the seaweed to dry." When I reflect on this fleeting life of mine, it is no different than that of the Buddha when he was seeking the Dharma. So that was from the Manobu letter, which actually I translated for, I think it was volume 3 or 4 of the writings of Nichiren Shonin.
It's interesting listening to the descriptions that are in your book, and then being, having been to Mount Minobu in modern times, many times, and the streams are all kind of blocked up and dammed up, and there's no turning rapids. The sound of cicadas is there, the frogs are there, the Hokkaido bird sound is there, but, it is dramatically changed. And
no monkeys.
One of my favorite places to visit when I go there is not the founder's grave, because it's not really a grave, but the Hermitage site, which is kind of off to the side, and every time I go there, I cry. So even, prior to Shingo Dojo, I spent 2 or 3 days just kind of isolated and getting ready for Shingo Dojo. And most of the time I went up to and meditated in front of the Hermitage site.
I wonder, Ryuei Shonin, I wonder if, I haven't read much of Nichiren's own personal writing, so you're saying that what you just read was primarily a translation of of a letter he wrote during the Manobu period?
Right, well, the last 2 paragraphs of what I read were from the Manobu letter, yes, and then other...
kind of struck me. The way he weaves, first of all, it's beautiful. I just thought, for instance, the pearls on the spider web. I mean, that's an image that immediately occurs to me. But I'm amazed at how he weaves that with Dharma, the mood of suchness. And there was another portion where he's talking about, the entire landscape seems to take the aspect of a Buddhist meditation for him. Is that from the letter as well?
Yes.
That's from...
Yeah. So, well, that was that was from an earlier letter at the very beginning, where he's talking about the mountains surrounding them. So let me see. I'll look at the endnotes. There's an endnotes and a glossary in here to help people out reading the book.
It's interesting that you reflect on that there, Peter, because a lot of people only think of Nichiren in terms with cut off their heads.
Yeah.
More,
it's just beautiful. It really is
a top reverence sometimes.
Well, that's in there too, though. Yeah, it says the events, thoughts, and dialogues in this chapter, the one that I just read from, are based on Kangyo Hachiman Sho, Shuju on Kudomai Gosho, Tokidono Gosho, Konichibo Gosho, Ajichi Shufuku Sho, Ojikyoji, Kyodai Sho, Kyoei Sakan Dono Gohenji, Ichinosawa Nudo Gosho, Ueno Dono Gohenji, Ni'ama Gozen Gohenji, and Mushiro Sanmai Gosho. So that's a lot of Gosho that built up what I read, and also some of the parts I didn't read from that chapter.
If I could ask, and this is my last question, I don't want to monopolize the time, but what was your initial impulse for writing this?
I guess more than a year ago at this point, not last summer, the summer before, the beginning of summer, my sensei asked if I would write a book on Nichiren's life for the 35th anniversary of the San Jose Temple, and his idea was to just paste together all the passages, biographical passages from the 7 volumes. And I said to him, well, nobody wants to read that because it's boring. And I said it would be much better to use that as a basis for a historical fiction. And I convinced him that it would be better to do it that way. I don't think he was expecting a book that... What's that?
This is a year and a half ago, did you say?
Right. So I had a year to write the book. What he was not expecting was that the book would end up being 564 pages long. It's very thick.
Yeah, it was a brick when you held it up earlier. I'm amazed that is a product of only a year and a half. That's remarkable.
Yeah, well, also the print size is a little larger than normal, but even still, yeah, it's a lot of writing.
Well, I'm glad that you wrote it. I'm glad that you wrote it. I had begun a series of, I had imagined writing not a similar book, but a fictionalized, an entirely fictionalized. I'm slightly irreverent sometimes, and so it's a good thing I didn't finish writing it, because I had Nichiren, complaining about being on Sano Island and how freaking cold it was, and using just about that kind of language. But the reality is that here's a human being, and you have portrayed it, and I'm glad that you did it, and I didn't follow through with my project.
I don't know. I'd like to have read your account too, but yeah, I did mention the cold on Sado Island. In fact, I'd love to visit there in winter sometime so I can see for myself what it was like. Oh, what it is, Jim?
No, I'm from Florida.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to Sado Island in the wintertime.
I've been to Minobu in the winter. In fact, the first time I went to Minobu was in the winter, so I was very happy to see what it was like there, and see a little bit of what Nichiren was talking about. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, most of these people have a prior history before Nichiren Shu, except for Peter here, I don't think. But did anybody catch the AAO?
Yes.
And okay, so I see some nodding heads. So people have heard AAO before someplace. We won't necessarily say we've heard it, but
about that is I got a book about samurai and ninja when I was at the airport in Tokyo heading back to San Francisco, and I think it was just before I wrote that passage. Anyway, this book had absolutely nothing to do with Nichiren Buddhism at all. In fact, it was about samurai, especially in the later periods, Edo period. But one of the things it mentioned was that the battle cry of the samurai was AAO.
yeah.
And when I read that, I was like, oh, wow, okay. So that's what that was.
Yeah, it's actually very accurate.
Use that.
I encountered it in other manga that had nothing to do with necessarily samurai or Buddhism. And yeah, it appears and it is historical.
Yeah, yeah. So I had to use it. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you did, because in a way,
here where I listen to your comments. So before I get to
in a way, I'm glad you did, because in a way, what you've done sort of liberates it from the prior history that many people have. So that was a big deal in that other organization, and I thinking, if we all had the thought that AAO was only theirs, then we would be mistaken.
Yeah, yeah. So there you go. Let's see. Any other questions or comments about the? Should I say more about it and what I did? I think, yeah, maybe I will.
One last question.
Wait, before you do, let's. I like to just give several minutes of silence to let people really decide if they have nothing more to say.
Okay.
I did have one more question.
Sure.
You mentioned that you had translated that portion in those sections of the Gosho.
Yes. Several years ago, I could read about 3,000 kanji. In other words, I could look at a Chinese character and know the meaning of it, if not how it's pronounced in Chinese or Japanese, but I knew the meaning. And so I could basically puzzle out the meaning of the passage. And with my wife's help and my sensei's help, I was able to translate that relatively short Gosho. It's like 4 or 5 pages.
Okay.
It was one of the most lyrical of Nichiren's Gosho, too. So that's why I wanted to share that tonight. I really like that passage. And my wife has told me that in Japan today, people still study passages in Nichiren's writings as examples of rhetoric and literature from that period of Japanese history. So Nichiren's known as a very good writer.
Okay. That certainly is a great example of it.
Yeah. So another thing I would like to say about this book is that it, let's see, I start with Nichiren and the book actually begins, the first chapter, Nichiren's on his deathbed, and the whole rest of the book is him looking back on his life. So he starts with his childhood just before he goes to Seishoji. And I spend, as I said, the text of the book is actually, before you get into the appendixes, let's see, so 473 pages. And the first, let's see, I think it was like 126 pages. No, more than that. The first 166 pages is spent world building. We talk about Tolkien was a great world builder. He built Middle Earth and came up with languages and the religion and everything. And George R.R. Martin's world building of Westeros and the Game of Thrones. So Frank Herbert, who wrote the Dune series, world building. So the thing is, medieval Japan. Oh, I'm echoing. Is somebody? Anyway, medieval Japan requires that kind of world building on the part of modern readers, and I would think even modern Japanese readers, because it is so strange, so different from what we are used to. And so I found that I needed to educate the reader just as Nichiren was being educated about the world he was living in, about the geography of it, including the spiritual geography that they took literally of Mount Sumeru and all the heavens and hells. I needed to describe the political situation where the imperial court had lost power and now the samurai were calling the shots. So for the first time in Japanese history, they were being ruled by a military junta, basically. And then I needed to describe all of the basic Buddhist beliefs and precepts and ways of life that Nichiren took for granted, but which we know nothing about. I have a chapter there where he is ordained as a monk. And in fact, we know absolutely nothing about what kind of ordination ceremony he had. It might have, my sensei pointed out to me, it might have been as simple as calling him into the room, shaving his head, and saying, okay, take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and now you're a monk. Or it could have been something much more elaborate, but we don't really know. So what I did was I extrapolated from passages in Nichiren's writings where he talks about the precepts and how everyone in Japan were disciples of Daimyo Daishi because they all accepted the precepts in the Brahmanet Sutra. And I extrapolated from the modern Nichiren Shu ordination ceremony. I even extrapolated a bit from the way precepts are given in the modern Zen schools in America because they still use the Brahmanet precepts. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a Tendai ceremony. So what I did in the chapter was, what was important to me was not so much trying to say, here is exactly how Nichiren is ordained, because we don't know, we can't know. But what I wanted to show was, I guess through the description of the ordination, show the kind of things that Nichiren would have taken for granted as part of the lifestyle and the ideals and values of the Mahayana monk in Japan at that period of time. So as the reader reads this ordination ceremony, now they know what the precepts were about that Nichiren believed everybody was following at that time, based on his own statements. So by the time you get to page 166 of this book, you will learn a lot generally about Japan at that period of time, about the Buddha's enlightenment. There's a whole passage in there about the Buddha sitting on the Bodhi tree facing down Mara. about basic Buddhist teachings, and especially the Tendai way of looking at the 5 periods of the Buddhist teachings. There's a whole chapter that presents an overview of the Lotus Sutra. Chapter after that where I show how Nichiren related to the Lotus Sutra in terms of the Tendai teachings of Ichigen Sanzen, the 3,000 worlds in a single thought moment, and also the esoteric practices based on Lotus Sutra that Nichiren was exposed to way before he began his own teaching, and which are obviously influential on his own presentation of how to practice the Lotus Sutra. So there's more in this book than just Nichiren's life. There's everything around him as well. So anyway, there you go.
I'm glad that you mentioned that in the course of this presentation, that we really don't know. Actually, we don't know more stuff than we actually do know. Much of what we teach is just a fraction of what it was like or what was available or what was happening in the time of Nichiren. I became aware of that when I, was in school and was studying just art history and sculpture and painting just of that era, just a 500-year period. It's amazing what we do not know compared to what we think we know. And, it's like people ask about Juzu. It's like, we don't know. We create myths, but we really don't know. And you would think, well, why don't we know something as common and ordinary as Juzu?
Right. You know what else we don't know? We don't know whether Nichiren was fully ordained or not. That blows my mind. He was ordained by Dozenbo privately at Seichoji. But then he spent, I guess, almost 12 years, or I don't know if he was there for quite 12 years, but yeah, just about 12 years at Mount Hiei. But we don't know whether he was ever ordained at the official Mahayana precept platform on Mount Hiei or not. And I find that very interesting. So sometimes in some of the letters, but I don't think they're authenticated ones, but in some of the attributed letters, which he may have written, he says, I am a priest without precepts.
Yeah.
Why would he say that? Well, if he did write those letters and he did say that, I think he might have said it because he never received ordination at the official precept platform on Mount Hiei. But we don't know. We don't know one way or the other. And ultimately, it's not that important. But it's interesting that something so seemingly basic as to whether Nichiren was fully ordained or not, we don't know.
Actually, I don't consider it unimportant. I think it in a way, it can be used as a liberating thought when we feel constrained by rules and regulations that people are unable to document where those rules and regulations come from.
Right.
The idea of being self-ordained is not such a bad thing. Sometimes we allow systems or processes or authorities to tell us what is good and what is bad. And yet, there are many examples throughout history of instances where people who might have been classified as not good or whatever, but the system or whatever, who have indeed done really remarkable things without those credentials.
Yeah. Well, the thing about credentials is basically what a credential says is that a bigger organization of people is attesting that this person has done their homework and knows their stuff. And that doesn't mean that person's necessarily a good person or especially talented at that material, but there has been quality control put in place.
It also doesn't mean that the quality that's been controlled is necessarily good quality or beneficial quality. So I think
that's true.
For me, it's about opening up to say, we can talk about this, we can examine it, and we're not threatened by that examination.
Yeah. To be the difference between getting your credits at a small community college or at Harvard, I guess. But even then, didn't George Bush Jr. go to Harvard or?
What matters most is what you learned getting those credentials. And,
Right.
some people can parrot things very well, and some people can create new ideas based on the little bit that they learned. So,
Right. So, when we look at people in the past, like, Nichiren or Dogen or other people, Tiantai, we don't need to worry about their credentials because we can see from the body of work they left behind and the lineages they left behind the worth of what they did and what they taught. The real trick is the modern person now. How do we judge the person we just met a few weeks ago or a few months ago as to the quality of their teaching?
I would like to I'd like to interrupt here if I may. We've got 10 minutes before the end time, and not the end of times, but the end time of this meeting. This is people's last chance to ask the question, and Ryuei's opportunity to do a wrap up.
Okay. Any questions?
Ray, have you ever
Yeah.
seen the movie Nichiren and the Mongolian Invasion?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yes,
It was
I got a copy of it.
yeah.
How historically accurate is that?
Not very at all.
Not very.
There's let me think. Well, first of all, just right off the top of my head, they showed Nichiren chanting for the defeat of the Mongols on the beach.
Right.
And if I remember right, and then the kamikaze winds come and destroy the Mongol fleet. Well, that is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, first of all, Nichiren, as in the passage I was just reading, didn't leave Mount Manobu the last 8 years of his life. When did he go to the beach?
Right.
And secondly, he made a big deal about the fact that the Mongols, let me put it this way, it was an embarrassment to him that the Mongol fleet was wiped out twice by seemingly divine intervention. Although there was a lot more to it than that. I was talking about this the other day, that the samurai hadn't managed to hold off the Mongol army with their Chinese and Korean conscripts for as long as they did. That fleet would not have been caught by those, by the typhoons. So it wasn't all just divine intervention. But in any case, it was, people were saying to Nichiren, and I have this in the last chapters of the book, how, well, if what you say is true, how was this fleet destroyed? Nichiren never claimed that he was responsible for that through his own prayers. And in fact, what he did say to them was, well, the Mongols are certain to come back, and if that was such a great victory, and they show me the head of the Mongol emperor, the threat is still there. So that movie just really skewed everything the wrong way to try to show Nichiren as some, great miracle-working prophet.
I kind of figured as I was watching it, a lot of the movies made in Hollywood have a tendency to be Hollywoodized, and this wasn't made in Hollywood, but it was Hollywoodized according to Japanese. It made great. It was a good movie at the time for theaters in the 50s.
Right. Yeah, it's certainly entertaining to watch, but
Oh yeah,
not accurate. Nichiren also appears in the NHK, the Japanese Broadcasting System, did a teleseries about the life of Tokamune, who Nichiren, when Nichiren was exiled to Sado, that's who was the regent at the time. He was a very young man. And so Nichiren appears in that teleseries several times. And one thing I found interesting was that the Komatsubara ambush, as portrayed in that teleseries, was so lame compared to the actual incident described by Nichiren's letters. And I realized they couldn't do it because the budget would have been too big. They'd need, people on horseback and armor and shooting arrows and this big, huge choreography for, to even do a little bit of justice to how Nichiren described the incident.
they couldn't green screen it and do CGI.
Yeah, no, this is just like a soap opera, basically.
Right.
No big budget movie. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Sorry again that I couldn't be here for the first half hour. Hopefully, if I'm able to give another presentation like this, I'll be a little more mindful of scheduling my time.
Will your book be available through NBIC?
Hopefully, eventually it will. Yeah.
Okay. Is it on Amazon right now?
Not yet. I'm thinking that within a few months, I will do another revision of the book and make it available. Yes. Yes.
This is it's, I guess, unrelated, but Ryuei mentioned the Fraught with Peril webpage at the beginning. I'm wondering, is that still active? I visited a couple of times over the past few months, and I haven't seen any new additions.
Well, I'm still active. I'm still active. So nobody else.
Oh, okay, that's a shame.
It's unfortunate, and I haven't posted anything there new since, well, I try to keep our temple schedule updated, but I haven't added anything since I finished this book on Nichiren's life. But right now, I'm working on a commentary on the Senri Show, Collection of the Prime, and I'll be putting that up there at the site.
Okay, thank you.
So, for those of you who may not be familiar, there's already on there full commentaries on Risho and Kokudan, Kaimoku Sho, and Kanji Hanzan Sho. So those are all up there. And the Kaimoku Sho one especially covers a lot of material, not just Nichiren's teachings, but the whole development of Buddhism in India and East Asia. Deals with Confucianism, Brahmanism, all kinds of stuff.
It's going to be interesting as you work on the Senji Show to, just take a look at our comparisons. I've written quite several hundred or several thousand words on Senji Show, and I'd be interested what we each find differently about that is exciting or motivating or interesting or what we want to focus on. So it'll be exciting. I would like to thank Ryuei for joining us tonight, and yeah, so applause all around and appreciation. I will say that I'm going to take a look at the recording. The audio has been a little bit difficult, primarily because of the background noises where Ryuei is, and I can't cut him off, can't silence him. So we'll have to see what's salvageable, what's usable, and I'll try to piece something together and put it on YouTube as some highlights, perhaps, of this presentation, which I'd like to do. I really would like to promote Ryuei's book. It's a lot of work to write a book, and it's not always profitable. And we don't have a big marketing structure behind us to sell these books, and I would like to do whatever I can to assist in that project for Ryuei's work.
Thanks. Thank you.
And thank you all tonight for joining in. Thanks for your attention, your participation, and your patience. And we will, for those of you, I think everybody here actually belongs to the temple, so we have Sunday service this Sunday, regular time, and our next online presentation is with Nyoke, who will be doing a two-part series on diversity and in Thailand. So that should be interesting.
Great.
Well,
thank you so much. Thank you.